8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I am streaming, and I thought today I would show you a little about the Microsoft Terminal new product that you can get from the Microsoft Store. Again, you might have to be on the insider track, but maybe not. It's time to start checking by just going into the Microsoft Store and searching on Terminal. It'll surely be the first thing to come up under Terminal, since I'm sure Microsoft is interested in promoting it right now. I already have it installed, so you can see the install button becomes launch. I'll just close out of that. And I have already customized it quite a bit for my purposes. One of the things you cannot do with something that has been installed from the Microsoft Store is to go over here to Properties and set this to maximized. You can see it is set to maximized, but that would have absolutely that would have no impact on how this works. If I set it to minimized and hit apply and hit OK, and then quit out of this, and then open that again, you'll see it opens to full screen. So it took a while to get there, and in fact it opens to full screen in Ubuntu. LSB, I think. What is that? LSB_release. Tells us what version we are on. Thought it would. LSB release. Okay, well, I bring up my journal. And Shift G to jump to the bottom. I've done this recently. It does in fact look like LSB release -A. So I'll just copy that. Quit out of my journal. Paste that in. And I can show you here that I am on Ubuntu 16.04. And I'll probably upgrade that to 18.04. But you can see that is my Control-Shift-4. I probably should put it up here. I still have Ubuntu installed under WSL1, the Windows Subsystem for Linux version 1. You can see I have the settings a little bit different to remind myself I'm in version 1. I don't want to be here accidentally, and I hardly ever use it anymore. So what's really going on here that you can start to take advantage of? Well, after you have the Windows Terminal installed, its default is really going to be coming up to the Windows PowerShell. Perhaps CMD, which I have on Control-Shift-3, and they have not too long ago added an Azure Cloud Shell. I'm not sure if I want that, but I'll keep it on there because I have to keep aware of what's going on with Microsoft's cloud offerings, as well as Google's and Amazon's. It's the infrastructure of today. So where do we go from here? To understand what's going on, you simply go into settings, which interestingly I found when I first did this, it brings up VS Code, Visual Studio Code, which is, I guess, a junior version. It's a completely different product than Visual Studio.net or whatever they're calling it. There's the high-end Visual Studio product, which is a full-blown IDE that Microsoft still promotes, but for web purposes and for getting everyone on board from the free and open source world, this one, VS Code, the free one that's built on the Google Electron Chrome components, is the real popular one. So you'll see that we have this maximized in here. I added that line once the Microsoft team added support for full screen at startup, so I jumped on that bandwagon. That cannot be done from the desktop shortcut icons with stuff that was got from the Microsoft Store that I've been made aware of. So there's a bunch of global stuff. Here's globals. That's the first indent. So you look to see its key bindings, and then the list of key bindings, and then after this outdent. So you can see that Visual Studio Code is very much geared towards JavaScript and JSON and keeping track of indents. This is all the stuff you don't have to do in Python because indents have meaning and you don't have to have so much support structure to make sure you're keeping good object structure. It's just enforced inherently in Python. And I'm able to use environments like Vim, which don't give you all these extra visual cues. Although I do have the numbers, I could go on forever. Anyway, key bindings, outdent, globals. This is the last outdent of globals. And now we have profiles. So the way I have made, I'll drop this into screen 2 using my old trick. If you don't do this yet, you should. And now I can go back and forth really quick. The way I have made Ubuntu the first option on the drop-down menu, and the default option most importantly, the default option when I start up these terminals, is to go down to the profiles where I have defined. This is Ubuntu 1, I can tell because of the way I named the files. But if I go down to where I have a command for Ubuntu 2 right here, I know that's running WSL, the new WSL, because that's on the system right now, calling up the new Ubuntu instance, which is a WSL2 virtual environment instance, as opposed to WSL1, which is not a virtual machine. It doesn't run under hypervisor. They're different contexts. You can't really tell by the way they're invoked, although I could put some parameters in there to explicitly tell it to be a version 2 session. But this GUI identifier you'll find, EA4, 2B2, is what's up here in the default. See, EB2, AE4. So by simply copying and pasting these, identifiers, these long identifiers, up into your default profile and your globals, from down where your profiles are listed, you control what comes up first. If I were to copy and paste the one for PowerShell into there, PowerShell would come up first. Here you can see command.exe, and so that's pretty much it. That's how I get, and there's font sizes. That's how I get the larger font size. You could put background pictures in here and control different icons and stuff. There's just a lot of options and configuration, and it's kind of real time, I believe. So if I go to the profile for my current Ubuntu, it's Ubuntu 2, right? And you can see that's a 20 here. I'll go to a 30. It's a bit unreasonably big, but I go back here and you can see the 30 point size. I go down to 10, go over here, and there's the incredibly small 10 point size. So I guess this is part of the virtue of Electron, and that's really, oh, this is not Electron. This, now that I mention it, this is based on Chrome's Electron development, multi-platform stuff, which is one of the ways how Microsoft can get VS Code on everyone's machines because it's easy to port. A bunch of other software is written that way, like GitHub's Atom text editor and Slack. But surprisingly, the terminal software itself is not Electron, contrary to what people might think, although Hyper.is is one of those things that came out. I don't want the documentation. I want the real Hyper, which I have installed on my machine. This is another version of a terminal software you'll see come up in a second, which is in fact based on Electron. Looks exactly the same. It's what I was using before I switched to Microsoft Terminal. It's viable, except the clear function. Whenever I typed clear, see, it works now, but it wasn't working and it became really problematic. And so something as simple as clear, when they went from version 2 of Hyper.is to version 3, made me start to investigate alternatives, and that coincided with the timing of Microsoft coming out with their own, at long last, unified terminal approach. So if you're on Windows 10, get yourself off of the old command, get yourself off of the old PowerShell, get yourself off of whatever hacky thing you're using to bring up terminal sessions or third party, and get yourself onto the the main stream now, because it's Microsoft, and there's going to be a lot of support behind this terminal. And it's a full-fledged Linux terminal, and you can see it comes up here with a number of things set, because when I go into my home directory, home directory, and I vim my bash, I believe it's startup, bash rc. No, I'll take a look here what it is. Bash it. It's going to be lso-la. It's my bash startup. There it is, bash profile. So I go vim.bash profile, and these are all the things that execute now when I start up. And you can see I activate a virtual env for Python and drop myself right into it. I export some display driver stuff, which I'll show you later on how I get graphics versions of desktop software running with an X server. And I set up all my aliases so I can jump around and do things really easily. And this is where I do my little welcome to Lundervand thing. So if I quit out of here, I can at any time. Let's see, what was that? That was hello.py. Probably won't find it because of paths. GitHub. And I happen to know it's in the helpers directory. And there you have it. That's what you see. I'm dropping myself basically into a virtual env, so that all my Python dependencies are isolated. Whenever I do a pip install, it goes into here, and I'm not sort of polluting the parent Linux system here. And I run my little hello.py out of my helpers, and I do a bunch of aliases that let me do things like drop into sbin, which is another way of doing things like alias. So, I'm always doing, there's where I start my journal. And stuff that's in sbin, because it's in your path, are always available to you no matter where you are. So what I had to do with my path for hello, I don't have to do with things like my J command or sbin or macro, because they are in my path. And so one-offs, I don't put in my sbin. I put in just a alias in my bash profile. And things that I use all the time in different directories, I put into my sbin. And these are fundamental Unix/Linux things that you do so that you can carry your customizations, your minimal customizations around rapidly in GitHub repos. So you just put everything from sbin into a GitHub repo, and you can pull it down wherever you want. There's some permission stuff to deal with, but tiny little scripts, which also are in sbin, can deal with that. And you have yourself a nice little universal system that can be with you for the rest of your life. And every once in a while, I just hit my G macro, which does a whole bunch of stuff, including backing up my private journal up to GitHub with all my latest edits that you're seeing there. Backs up Pipulate development directory. Your full Git commits and pushes. It does my regular scheduler directory based on Pipulate, my vimrc, and of course my sbin. And that's a nice little tour around the new Windows terminal, how you can incorporate Linux into your everyday life, even though you are on a Windows desktop. And people might say, well, it's not real Linux. You're getting used to Windows. Well, these desktops are just arbitrary things. There's nothing special about desktop software. If you're on Mac or Windows or even another Linux desktop, these are all just shells to, more fundamental stuff. And knowing the fundamental stuff is more important. And all the shell stuff, the operating system stuff, the keyboard shortcut, the full screen, the ribbons of virtual desktops to move back and forth, is in every operating system. And you just settle yourself into your particular operating system's keyboard shortcuts and stuff. And you can always redo that later when you switch desktops, and you'll be very comfortable on any desktop you go to. And as a final demonstration to show you that your Linux, software is here, I can launch all kinds of stuff, but I'll just do, XIs. If all goes right here, XIs should just pop up. Oh, yeah, it already did. Sorry. And, Linux software that has graphics requirements is not a problem. It runs under Windows 10, just as does other software. So don't let anyone tell you that Linux on Windows as your desktop is in any way inferior to Mint or Ubuntu or any other of the Linux desktops you can use. You get a full-fledged terminal, every bit as good as any Linux terminal. You get your Linux graphics software running under X, just the way it does, really, on true Linux desktops. And, which operating system is the one that's sort of in control at boot is an arbitrary issue, so long as the stuff you're doing is all going through interfaces that are portable for the rest of your life, which is Unix/Linux, really. So anyway, I'll stop my stream there. I think that gets the point across of what an awesome work environment you can have, a journal that'll be with you for the rest of your life, macros that never expire or go wrong when you have to drop your current text editor in favor of the new text editor du jour. This is just sort of a fundamental improvement in how you work. It just is fundamental and timeless, and will help you resist obsolescence for your entire life, and always remain capable and relevant to any problem, challenge, situation in mostly professional, but often also personal life, because you'd be surprised how many places this kind of stuff applies to your everyday life and not just coding for work. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to follow.